What's up? Thanks for checking out my channel today. We're going to be talking with Teague Shoup. You may know him from TikTok or Instagram. His film photography is what he initially started out as, and now he's a Leica photographer. We're going to go through his journey from film to digital, what he wishes to do in the world of photography, and everything about the social media landscape. So Teague, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Wow, screwed it up already. You and I being, having met on TikTok, I feel like most of the creators, especially in the photography landscape, I met on TikTok originally. Now, of course, I live close to New York, and then I just see everybody on the street because there's 10 street photographers.
Very jealous of that.
Per every person. Don't be. It's its own world of problems. But it's kind of cool. Everybody hates on TikTok for a lot of reasons, and justifiably so. But I think a lot of the cool parts of TikTok, meaning, the community aspect, at least in some subsects, is a huge positive. And I feel like I wouldn't have explored photography as much as I did if I didn't have kind of this online community to post work and talk to people about things. I mean, Lord knows that, I started shooting on film. I don't think I would have ever gotten one roll to turn out correctly had I not had friends on social media to ask questions to. So, even though we met on TikTok and that can be, slandered and made fun of, I'm appreciative of it for, connections like this. So I'm happy to be on the channel today. I appreciate you having me. So thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk a little bit more about that because I don't know about you, but I definitely thought TikTok was kind of like the dancing app, the whole stereotypical thing. I was on Instagram Reels for a long time, and it took me a long time before I finally transitioned over, and I just found that, I don't know, the reach was so much better, and you could actually get your work out there and have fun. And I don't know, especially when you started, we were around the same time, early 2022. It was a very different landscape than it is today.
Very much so. And almost unfortunately so. I feel like especially, there's plenty, like I said, of subsects that seem to still be thriving. But I think photography on TikTok has really taken kind of a backseat, unfortunately, because it was a good place to get creative, a good place to show work, especially since Instagram, for just the plain pictures is kind of dead. I think we all agree on that. So TikTok, even though it may be probably the worst format to view photography, just quick flashes, it was at least a place that you could get the work out there and have it be seen. And so, with TikTok, like you said, we were kind of doing it at the same time. We were kind of exploring the media of posting it online at the same time. So we kind of got to see almost the full trajectory from start to finish, from birth to death. And I'm sure you're feeling kind of like the post, I hate to use the word of attention, but the post audience drop off, post audience, depression with it, and kind of where am I supposed to get my photos out there and have them be seen? And I am missing that aspect of TikTok. I know now Reels seems to be kind of picking up some momentum in terms of Reels and that kind of stuff. But I don't think that it's it's definitely not the same community as TikTok because I think the algorithms are different, and certainly the comments on TikTok seem to be a little kinder, surprisingly. But yeah, it is missed within the community, I feel.
I want to talk a little bit about your TikToks because I feel like you came out the gate swinging, especially did you have a background in photography before starting with film photography, or did you just kind of go in? Because I mean, it's very impressive, how strong your portfolio started.
It was a strange kind of, I've had a strange relationship with photography, and one that I have come to realize is kind of unique in its own way. I, of course, during the 2016 kind of everybody was getting a DSLR, fairy lights, Brandon Wolfel era. I got a camera during that, and I was in college, and I think I took pictures with it for 2 weeks. And all of it seemed so daunting. I had no idea what aperture, ISO, all that stuff. And immediately it just felt like too much for what I had going on. I was playing college football at the time. I didn't have enough mental bandwidth for it. So then 2022 comes around. Actually, the pandemic happens, and I see a bunch of TikToks, of like people posting film photos. And I liked this, film aesthetic. I was kind of trying out a new identity where I was trying to focus more on, artistic endeavors. I just kind of retired from bodybuilding, if you can retire from bodybuilding. And I was really looking for something that I could, express myself without, with sans vanity, because I didn't want to post my face anymore. And it seemed like something like, film cameras was kind of something I was interested in. I bought a film camera. I think I ruined about 20 rolls. And then finally it was Christmas of 2021. And then, so it was like the last part of 2021, I got a couple rolls developed and it worked. And it clicked immediately. I was like, oh, this is it. This is the feeling I'd been looking for. And then, it kind of was like 0 to 100 very quickly. And, looking back on that work, I certainly don't love it anymore, but I did have a lot of success with it very quickly. And I think it was just because I had started it so late. I was 27 at the time. I'm 29 now. I'm kind of, later than most people find art. And I think I could just consumed so much media about photography and film and all those things that by the time I actually got a camera and was like taking pictures, I had passed all of like the cliche things that normally people do when they get a camera. They just take pictures of everything. I was already so interested in trying to find photos of cinematic things and whatever. And I think that took, like, it was divine timing for myself. Like I found it at the right time. And then, 2 years later, I'm kind of all in on it, surprisingly.
Well, I still think those photos are worth a look, but I know that, so I actually went to school for like more the filmmaking side of things. So I have a very deep knowledge of like movies and that side of things, but in terms of photography history, I feel like I'm really lacking. And I know that you talked a lot about like Ernest Haas, and I think that was your main influence that you talked about like on TikTok, but how much did like looking into those photography greats influence like your early work and even now?
That was something that was invaluable. Anytime I have like one of those hyperfixations, all I can do is like consume as much of it as possible. So, with film, I couldn't afford to just keep shooting film. So I would just sit there and watch YouTube video after YouTube video, go to a library and look at photo books. I would just do everything I could to consume as much photography as possible. And, it started off, like you said, film, adjacent. I found out like Stanley Kubrick was a photographer in his younger years. So I did
big influence.
Exactly. So, and I think we've talked about that. And so that was like, boom, there was the gateway. I was looking up the cameras he was using. I was like looking at what kind of photos he was taking. And then, you get like the thumbnail wormholes on the side where it takes you to another photographer, which takes you in another one. And I just got really obsessed with how many different styles there were, because I didn't know that, in my head growing up, there was like 3 avenues of photography. There was like portrait and fashion stuff, which was like something I really didn't have that much interest in. There was landscape, and then there was iPhone photography, or like when I was growing up, like disposable stuff where it's just everyday life stuff. I didn't know that there were, people doing kind of like abstract street photography. And, growing up in Wisconsin, where the hell was I going to do street photography or anything like that? So I had no knowledge of this, and I just did a huge deep dive. And I think that played so much into my influence and so much into how I see things, because I had just consumed so much photography. We talk about things that influence us in terms of like things that we like, but I very quickly found the stuff that I didn't like as well. And I think that kind of formed borders as well. And then as time's gone on, I kind of just chipped away at those things and found things I like about all of it. And now I'm trying to like get my work to reflect that. So who were some of your like earliest influences?
I started photography, like, I think if I connect the dots, like, I was kind of like way young, but I didn't
Okay.
really realize how much I enjoyed photography, videography until like it was around high school. I was like, I want to go to school for this. And
Yeah.
Kubrick was a big deal, but I was very much a film bro, but I think it's okay because I was like 14.
100,
So
it's
it's like the prime
acceptable.
time to be
Yes.
one.
Yeah,
Yeah. So,
absolutely.
I watched Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs, and that led, American Psycho, Clockwork Orange, but Kubrick mainly. And I mean, especially like the opening of Clockwork Orange, or I mean, most of his work, that really kind of led me down that path. And then I started film photography actually because my grandmother passed away in 2016, and in her stuff was a Polaroid camera, and
Oh,
it
that's
didn't work.
cool.
So I started going to antique stores trying to find a Polaroid camera that would work.
Mm.
And this was around the time Polaroid wasn't a thing yet. It was the Impossible Project. And
Mm.
there was a little pop up in Frisco at one of the malls, and they were selling refurbished Polaroids. So I got an old 600 box camera. My dad bought it
Cool.
for me, and I started on Polaroid, and I have my first image somewhere. I like shook the hell out of it, and it's all messed up because you're not supposed to shake it.
Right.
Um, and shortly after, I found a Minolta X370 at an antique store for 60
Yep.
bucks,
There you
and
go.
I used that camera for like years. And like you said, like I ruined a whole bunch of rolls, but it was like I wanted to practice composing and settings and all this
Yeah.
stuff for filmmaking. And then it kind of took on its own
Right.
life as I went to school, and the photos started getting better. And I mean, I don't know. I like both. And like, if I had a career in either, I mean, I'd be okay. But in terms of photography, I mean, there really isn't a whole bunch of influence. I do like a lot of William Eggleston's work now.
Okay.
He's very banal and, very simple scenes. And I think that's kind of like you were saying, like street photography in Wisconsin, where I
Right.
live, like it doesn't really exist. And through my work, I work in a media agency here in town. Like I do a lot of event photography, so I get to do a little bit of street stuff every now and then,
Yeah.
but it's
Doc you.
definitely a different flavor than New York street photography. But yeah, I mean,
Yes.
at this point, I mean, I think a lot of it is films, and
Yeah.
I always would say that I was studying every time I was watching a film and all that,
Yeah.
and it's kind of racked up, just like all the compositions you see, and um, yeah, and definitely film photography, YouTube. When I was way younger, I was like obsessed with it,
Oh, I
and
bet.
I'm a little bit drawn back a bit now, but obviously I want to enter the space myself, and that's what
Sure.
I'm trying to do.
As we're having the conversation. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I agree that um, I honestly think that film has had just as much of an impact um, on my photography, and if not more impact than photography did. Like obviously, once you see a certain photographer's work, it may open up new avenues and new thought processes that you may not have considered. It was like you're seeing through a new lens, literally sometimes. And I think film does that as well because it can also take you to different places too. And a lot of film, depending on what you're watching, so many of the things you're seeing are everyday life things, and you're finding kind of a beautiful way to look at those. Even if it's just like in some kitchen, you're finding out like, oh, there is a composition here depending on light and depending on these things. So, or they're using different focal lengths that maybe you associated, like speaking personally, I'm not going to project this out in the world, but speaking personally, like I didn't like wide stuff when I first started. I didn't like
Yep.
28 millimeter Gary Winogrand stuff. I didn't like it because I just felt like it was like I associated with iPhone, like just these normal snapshots, whatever.
Just
And I
that
didn't,
point five look.
yeah, exactly. And I didn't
Yeah.
see the appeal in it until I started seeing other photographers using similar focal lengths that were doing stuff that I like Alex Webb, like, these, even like filmmakers who were shooting a lot of wide stuff, like my favorite filmmaker, Terrence Malick. A lot of his DPs use like, 18, 12, 10 millimeter lenses. And I was like, wow, you can actually get something with this. And I didn't think that was possible. So I think, film has played just as much of an influence on me as photography. But I also do think there is value in, studying the greats of your own art form. The thing I don't know if you experience, but I certainly experience, I almost am like tentative to take too much influence now. There's that like Dunning-Kruger thing where when you first start something, you think you're really good at it. And then
100%.
Yeah, as you get better, you think you suck at it. And then you kind of come out of that. I'm kind of in the bottom part of it where it's like, I'm trying not to take in, I'm trying to find my own thing right now. And I'm trying to find my own vision because so much of it was like, I talked about this previously where, I'd be in different phases where I'm emulating people I admire. And then, each one, yes, I'm still getting better at myself, but I'm still emulating different people. I'm really trying to find my own thing and what exactly I want to say with my, photography. So I'm almost avoiding looking too much at people's work. And I almost don't, there's been opportunities. Alex Webb is one of my favorite photographers of all time, especially, he's alive still. So I would love to sit down and have a conversation with him, but he has workshops and I'd love to do it, but I almost don't want to, because then I'd feel like I was a student of his, you know what I mean? Like I'd almost feel like I'd be on the photography family tree in that sense. And it's like, I almost want to just carve my own path, but that's of course, some psychological restraint for myself where I have to, no one's self-made if you really think about it, but I have this weird thing where I just want to be as original as possible. But that doesn't happen for everybody. Certainly some people seem to pick up a medium and immediately they're original, they're their own thing. But you almost feel bad for those kind of people because then they're known for that and then they have to stay there for probably longer than they might have had they started just with experimentation.
Yeah.
But yeah, do you feel that with influence? Do you try to avoid direct influence and try to kind of find your own thing?
Yeah, I mean, I still watch other people's work. When it comes to YouTube and stuff, I'm more watching YouTube now for how voices are done or how intros are laid in, how the music is done.
Yes.
I watch on that level and I'm not watching for a content level anymore. It's very much oh, well, how are they doing the voiceover? And did they shoot this after the fact or are they shooting it
Yes.
Yeah. So I guess to go back to your question though, I think for a lot of my stuff, I think you can prepare all you want, but once you get out there, it kind of whatever you've seen or done, it kind of follows you.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So no matter what, you're still using what you've looked at in the past, for better or for worse.
Exactly. 100%.
Because I'm trying to think the last shoot I went out on for the previous video I did, I wasn't really thinking of anything. I just I was like, this image looks good to me, and maybe someone else will like it. And even then, a lot of times, I'm in the video going I don't think this is good.
Right.
And then I get the images back and I start to you sit with them for a bit and you kind of grow to love your own work.
Yeah. And then you play with the composition, you play with crop, you play with, editing, those kind of things. That's kind of how I feel as well, especially with some of the, because, and you probably are you referring to film photography? Because even with digital, there are so many photos where I'm
well, I've been doing the X100V a little bit, so that's been interesting.
Yeah, right.
And it's fun to do just no just out the gate, this is what the image is, but I still can't help myself. And I go into Lightroom and I tweak and I do all my stuff. But yeah.
No, as you should. I'm sorry. If we want to go down this rabbit hole, I am all for team editing. I
think so too.
Yeah, there's something about that conversation with editing and whatnot, that when I first started, and you could scroll deep enough into my TikTok where I was like, these are unedited photos. These are straight scans. These, whatever. And then someone shattered my glass going hey, even that is edited to be a baseline for you to then interpret your photo. And I'm like, oh, you're right. And now I'm on the team of I want nothing to get in between me and what I want the final image to look like. If I have, like, do you know who, I might butcher his last name, Harry Gruyard? I think it's Gruyere, but like,
I
are you familiar
definitely
with
have
him?
come across the name,
Sure.
but I don't know his work.
So one of my friends is a really big fan of his, and he was talking to me, and he showed me this video where they were showing Harry's process, and one of his street photos had like 9 layers of Photoshop. You know what I mean? Like it was like layer, and like that was his final image. Whether he was tweaking colors, whether he was taking someone out of it. And while I'm still tentative to use Photoshop, I still don't. I edit the hell out of my Lightroom photos. I'm not trying to make them unrealistic. I'm not changing the color of the sky or anything, but I want the final image to look how I envisioned it when I took it. And sometimes I'll take the image with the edit in mind, if that makes sense, as I'm pointing a pen at you like a director.
I mean, I don't know how much you utilize like the AI in Lightroom, but I use like the subject, like you can gather the subject and the background.
Yep.
And I do things with the tone curve while I'll raise up the subject and lower the background, and it does a bit of a more cinematic look. And I've definitely wanted to do a video where I would show like all that I do sometimes, because I think people don't know like everything you can do. And I think it kind of goes back down to like you were talking about, people get into film for the very simple artsy nature of it, and they forget that like a big defense is people talk about Ansel Adams, and he did the burning and dodging of images, and you know, he's considered like one of the photographers of that time, and yet they're all doing it. They're all adding a little thing here or there. It's just analog versus a digital process.
Exactly. Yeah, it just feels different because that was, like you said, an analog manual process where you're having to like manipulate something rather than just like press a button. But also, it's the same thing. Like I guarantee if Ansel Adams were alive today, he'd be using that 100%. I definitely do. I do use like the, you know, like you said, isolating a subject and changing, you know, it again. Whatever it takes to get the final image that you as the artist are trying to convey to the audience. And now, like I said, I try to get as close as I can in camera. Don't get me wrong. But I don't think there has been a single photo that I have taken in 2 years that I haven't tweaked something. You know what I mean? There is nothing that is straight out of camera. And there's going to be someone, you know, maybe someone listens to this and is like, oh, you know, they feel betrayed. But I certainly would have if, you know, when I first started, if I heard, you know, Alex Webb tell me this, I would have been like, you lying bastard. You know what I mean? Like, but that's just the reality of things. And people are doing way more than me in terms of editing and in terms of Photoshop and whatnot. And also, I'm sorry, it's still my photo. At least it's not AI. At least it's not an AI prompt photo. At least I took it. So there is that, you know, not whatever AI entity is listening, I'm not slandering it. But, you know, there is a difference in that. So I'm not too concerned about the editing process. I love it. I love post-processing.
Film, it's pretty annoying.
Yes.
I've gotten into the whole scanning and developing game.
Oh, okay.
And it is a anxiety-ridden mess.
Yes.
Because I'm trying to get no dust, because I don't want to spend 4 hours on a single photo, just getting every little piece. So I've been doing all right for like my black and white work, but I'm not going to ever touch color. But
there have been times where, like, you know, I love the idea of that. I would love from start to finish, from the moment I took it to the moment I scan it and post it, I did everything. I would love that aspect of it. I would love the intimacy of that process. But I don't think I could forgive myself if I messed it up. Like if there was a photo in there that I was like, I need this photo. This is, you know, one of my favorites, and I screwed it up. No, I wouldn't be able to handle that. At least if it's you know, the photo houses, at least I could blame them. If it gets screwed up, then I can just like not go there anymore. But if it's myself, I couldn't handle that. So more power to you with that.
So I've been doing color grading myself over the past year. I've been learning DaVinci and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And I'm just curious, does color grading at all influence how you edit your photos? Because for me, I've been learning a lot about color grading and how like much of the histogram is like very much towards the darker side, and like the white point is really reduced. And um, I don't know. Do you think films influence your editing at all when it comes to your images?
Certainly, definitely. And one thing I am trying to consciously avoid is, and this is no shade to anybody that does this, but there are people that have, again, like almost gimmicky edits where it's like unrealistic and whatnot. And now that's their own thing. I love that for them. I try not to do that for my own photos. I think for my black and white work, I have a very specific look that I'm going for. So it may be like a consistent edit. But as far as my color work, most of the time, I'm trying to keep it as close to real life as possible. Now, whether I turn up the saturation a little bit or something like that, I'm all for it. But I don't like the tone curves with like the reddening the highlights and whatnot. I've never really used that at all. In my fashion work, I do that stuff because that to me is conveying a much different thing than my street and docu work does. So like that, I'm learning that for fashion, but for my street stuff, I am trying to keep it as close to real life, or at least maybe an idealized version of, the image. Maybe it was like, oh, it was a really bright sunny day and it was really warm and I hated it, so I cooled it down a little bit. Aside from that, I am trying to keep it, as close to real life as possible.
How is moving to New York? Because you had this journey of learning photography, and then you enter the Big Apple,
Yeah.
so to speak. How does
Yes.
that like? How was that?
So, when I started photography, I was living in Cleveland. And, yes, it's a city. Yes, there are people. Certainly no one is out with a camera. So I was doing a lot of like, when it was film, I was just walking around, taking my camera with me everywhere kind of stuff and kind of just shooting everyday life things. And then I started going to the Cleveland Museum of Art and photographing there. It was still on film, and then I went digital. But then when I moved to New York, it was overstimulation, 100% overstimulation. And I think the difference was in Cleveland, I was searching for subjects. It's a city, but there's still not that many people in downtown. So I would be out hunting, and I would be trying to find people, and I would be so happy if one person got in the place that I wanted them to be. And I wouldn't even get a second chance. So it was like I'd get one shot at it. And then when I moved to New York, it was like there's so many subjects and there's so much opportunity for good photos that I was freaking out. I was like, and I was taking a lot of bad images because it was like, so moving to New York, it forces you to respond to what's around you. And and now I don't live in New York. I live in New Haven, Connecticut. So I still deal with that some because I only get to shoot once a week. And for my whole entire photography career or journey or whatever, I've only ever shot once a week. I bring my camera around to like everyday places, but I'm not like actively going out and shooting more than once a week. So I still have that feeling of like hunting, because I'm coming to the city to photograph.
Yeah, really intentional.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I think sometimes that affects me negatively. If I were in the city, kind of just bringing my camera with me every day, walking every single day, I think that would allow me to find even more naturalistic scenes, instead of me really just like trying to find a spot, sitting till I get something and then moving on, or like feeling like the shot is always around the corner. I think that would allow me to be a lot more passive about things, which I'm looking to do in the future. But it was a big change, and it forced me to hone my tools, because there's opportunity all the time and you have to be ready all the time to like, boom, take it, you got it. That person just got arrested, or like, that car just drove off or something, there's always something that way. And I think it's sharpened my tools a lot. Now, if I were to go back to Wisconsin and photograph, I'd still have those tools, but it would be such a different process in that sense. So now you live in what, Paris?
Paris, Texas.
There we go. Shout out the movie,
Yeah.
But living there, how do you go, are you going out and finding scenes? What's your process? Like, how many times do you think a week do you shoot?
Not much, to be honest.
No?
When it comes to like my personal work, like
Sure.
I recently got the X100, so that's been more recent as of late. But
Yeah.
I mean, for the most part, I work at an agency, like I had mentioned
Yep.
before. I'm mainly like editing in Premiere, DaVinci
Okay.
all day, every day.
Yep.
And then we have shoots. So we'll go out and shoot video, we'll do photo, and every now and then we'll have events. So, I mean, not too often, but I mean, like last week there was a fire in Paris, and I just happened to have my Fuji with me, and we walked down there, and I was able to get some shots real fast. And so I kind of had to, like what you were saying, like strike when the iron's hot.
Yeah.
Or I plan on very specific events, but
Yes.
for the most part, it's a shoot week, and it's kind of the whole thing of like, you don't ask a chef to cook
Right.
when he's off work. It's been kind of hard to do things for myself or shoot for myself because it is what I do.
Yeah.
So for the most part, I do that kind of photography, event photography, documentary coverage in a sense. For myself, it's very intentional. It's like I have to go out and I'm going to make a video, and just extremely intentional. So it's more Blue Moon, but I'm hoping to get out there as the weather's warming up here soon. So that should be exciting.
Yep. Oh, come on. The weather in Texas can't be that bad. Come on.
It was a high of 86 on Monday, and then it was like a low of 40s a few days later, and hailing and sleeting.
Okay, that sounds like what I grew up with in Wisconsin.
It has been a wild week.
Yeah, that sounds like we're happy tomorrow to get sunny and 60 in the city. Everybody's like planning to go out. Everybody's like texting like, "Are you going to be out shooting?" So enjoy your warmth, but that is a pretty big sway. I do think that conversation about doing creative work for a living. And then also like, the dichotomy of professional work and personal work. That is something that I am very conscious of because, I was a bodybuilder, and then I became a personal trainer. And as soon as I became a personal trainer, I hated working out. I hated it. I was like, as soon as I'm done training, I just want to go home. I don't want to do my own workout because it's my place of work. So I am not a professional photographer. I think I have made a total of like $200 photographing, period. You know what I mean? I am not making money from this. And I've been very tentative about, going professional, as stupid as that sounds.
Yeah.
But I've been very tentative about it because I don't want to lose any of that. I don't want to lose this thing that I've loved doing. But the good thing is, I have only been doing it once a week. So it's not something where I'd go from shooting every day, doing all, only what I want, to then having some photographic responsibility. And the other thing too is that I think if I were, I am looking to start venturing into professional work now, but it'd only be fashion. And fashion is such a different world from my personal stuff that the few times I have lately done stuff in that world, it's only been complementary to my own work because it's a completely different way of seeing. I can take the tools that I learned from street and use that for fashion, but it also it hasn't felt gross so far. It hasn't been some tainted experience. So I've been lucky that way. But it is.
I think that's kind of the one nice thing is that at work I shoot on a A7 IV, and it's very I'm going for the digital, clinical, safe look.
Yes.
With videos, it's very simple.
Right.
Yeah. And then so on my work, I feel like I almost act out. I do all the things that I can't do in a client sense. So shooting film, shooting more grainy, shooting more experimental editing.
Yes.
So that's been the one really nice thing is that because I do that style of work, I feel like I have to differentiate what I do on my own time.
Right, exactly. And I think that's a good, I'm glad that you're being mindful of that. Because I think a lot of people are so excited to just do the thing that they love for a living that they don't understand that there is like grunt work for creative work. You know, you're going to have to do things that you don't necessarily want to do. You're going to have to, you know, muddy your process or do things that maybe aren't what you would personally do creatively for a check. And I don't think people, at least, you know, if they are focused on artistry, I don't think they realize that that's going to be a factor. And that's also, you know, as pretentious and as privileged and as entitled as this sounds, I'm really trying to avoid. I really don't want to do anything I don't want to do. So that's hence why I haven't made any money on it, of course. But, you know, with like fashion work and that kind of stuff, I'm almost waiting to just do enough of my own stuff on my own with fashion because my girlfriend's a model, so I get to kind of experiment that way. I'm trying to get my look down for that the people then want to shoot with me instead of me having to like pitch and find work that way. You know, it's nice that you have an agency that you work for, so you're like consistently, you know, you're not for, you know, part of my friend, like whoring yourself out for a paycheck creatively. I'm also like trying not to do that as well, just because I'm so neurotic about artistry, and maybe unjustifiably so, because I have nothing to prove, you know, nothing to show for it yet. But
I mean, at the end of the day, though, you're still getting your reps in, and even if it's not something like you would do, you learn in the process, like all these
Absolutely.
little things,
Yep.
and yeah, it's definitely worth it in the end. I mean, I
Sure.
loved the job so much in the beginning just because I was being paid to use Lightroom,
Yes.
and I was teaching myself that for free, and it's like,
Yeah.
you could give me $0 and I would work in Lightroom.
Exactly.
So, I mean,
yeah. And that's where I am with fashion work right now. Like, I've done a few test shoots with agencies and whatnot, and because they're not paying me, I don't feel that weird obligation either to like to have it look a certain way or, you know, kind of adjust what my personal vision is. And so that's been good too. Like you said, like I'm so excited just to do it that they don't have to pay me. Now, eventually, I'm sure I would love some money for it. I can't do it for free forever, but it almost relieves the pressure of it because you're just so excited to do the thing that, you know, you're not so much worried about like, oh my God, I'm, you know, getting paid so much money to do this. Like you were so excited just to be able to do it for a living that, you know, it worked out. Yeah. So I feel like you're in a pretty good situation with that. So congrats.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So you're talking about fashion photography, but I know you've mentioned a little bit about on-set photography. Are you still looking into that whole world, or what's your thought process on that?
Very much so. That, if I could do anything for the rest of my life, I think it would be that, like for a living. And I don't want to be like the units. So an on-set photographer, like the photos that you see for promos and whatnot, like, you know, Dune is out right now. So people, you know, they're posting these on-set photos that look professional, like they're screen grabbed from the movie. Those are from on-set photographers. That's what they're called. Unit still photographers. That's what they're called. And I don't want to do that.
You want more like Josh Brolin?
I want
like that style of photography,
yes.
Greg Fraser's.
Yes, behind the scenes, almost street photography on set. That's what I'm looking to do, like docu work.
Oh yeah.
And I found that it is the perfect blend of things because A, there's no pressure. You just get to take whatever photos you want to take. But B, you're on a film set, so the lighting is cool, the people are cool, clothing.
It's all perfect.
Exactly, everything is perfect. So it's like you're doing street photography in a perfect world. With like all, you know, and it's not even just film sets. I've been doing it on some fashion sets too, and even that's even better. The clothes are even cooler, you know. But I love that so much, and it's been, you know, I've been on a movie set. It's been the same movie, but I've been on set a couple times now, and gotten to do it. And I was really good. You know, I'm good friends with the director, so he kind of was like, I like your street stuff. Do that on my set, and that's, you know, what we'll use. And it was just like the best experience. If I can find a way to like make money from doing that, I would do that forever. Because then when I go and do street, it's the same thing. Like it's the same way of looking at things, just like it is on a film set, except for I'm getting paid, and that's ideal.
Yeah.
So yeah, I am trying to move into that. Eventually, I will say, I am looking to like do my own movies. I'm hoping to shoot my first short film here in the spring and whatnot. But I do love the idea of just like being a ghost. I guess not in the room. I can't, but like just being a fly on the wall and just kind of floating about, taking pictures of things. The only thing is like I picked the wrong profession to be a big person. And because like I'm trying to sneak around set and I'm the biggest person on set because I'm like, 6'3", 240 pounds. Like nobody else on set is that, that stature. So I'm like trying to sneak and get photos behind corners and I'm like bumping into stuff. I haven't learned how to be very nimble yet. But no, it has been a dream. Are you interested in doing that kind of stuff at all?
Oh, yeah.
Because I feel like that's kind of like the perfect blend of what you're doing for work now and film,
Yeah, I was going to bring up, did you ever see the book for A Ghost Story? Those stills?
Brett Curry, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a great example.
Yes, exactly. And funny enough, that book and those photos was the reason I got the Leica Q, is because he shot those with that camera. And I saw that and I was like, okay, I shouldn't have not trusted a Leica anyways, but I was like, if it's capable of that quality photos, I'm going to get that. And that's what I shot the movie that I was on set with. And it was like, so yes, that I have seen that. I'm a big fan of that. I'm a big fan of Brett Curry. I think that's his name, right? Brett Curry.
Yeah.
Okay.
I forgot, but you filled it in.
Yeah, sure. But so that's something that you're interested in doing?
I mean, yeah, that would just be a dream job. I don't really know how else to say it.
Yeah.
I definitely like the side of cinematography, but I almost think like whichever one comes first for me, like I'm going to keep working on the filmmaking side of things and photography, and maybe just kind of sort of do both.
Sure. I mean, that's what Greg Fraser's doing. You know what I mean? He's doing cinematography on the biggest movie of the year and just carrying around a medium format camera on him and taking pictures in between. So there you go.
Speaking of him, like, are there any like current cinematographers that have really caught your eye? Because I know that pretty much anything Greg Fraser's been doing recently is, on mark,
Yes, yeah. I'm a big fan of Greg Fraser. I think that his work is almost getting to the point now where it's so big, it's like unfathomable. Like I couldn't imagine being in a place like that and taking those kind of photos. I do like the comparison of like how big Dune is compared to how like intimate his photos in that book are. I haven't gotten the book yet, but I've seen some of the photos, and I think it's a good, I can't think of the word, but it's a nice contrast. But then, I would say, as far as cinematographers, like I said, I'm a huge fan of Terrence Malick, and a lot of his early movies that I'm in love with were shot by Chivo. I forget his full name. It's like I forget his actual name, but I just know him as Chivo.
Yeah. Is that Emmanuel Lubezki?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
We're finishing each other's sentences here. Yes, Emmanuel Lubezki, and he shot like Birdman and those kind of movies. But especially in those Terrence Malick movies, that was like the number one influence in like me going wider with my lenses and whatnot. And then so him now. Now Terrence Malick has the camera operator during those years is now the cinematographer on his last movie, his last 2 or 3 movies, and I can't think of it, of course, off. That's where college football memory problems come in. But he's amazing. I don't know. I think I'm finding more and more out about, and obviously like what's his name? The one that always works with, who's like the most famous cinematographer? I can't remember his name, of course.
What director?
Well, he worked with Denis early on. He did like Blade Runner.
Well,
Deakins.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I was gonna say Van Hoytema.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Van Hoytema. Yeah, he's. I mean, both of those guys are awesome. So yeah, I'm finding the world of that to be really. I thought the director did all of that when I was younger, and then now finding out just how much control a director of photography has, that I'm like, I kind of like that, but I also like the director aspect too. Funny enough, on the movie that I worked on, the cinematographer's name was Richard Rutkowski, and he just shot that new show for Spielberg, Masters of the Air, I think it's called.
yeah.
And he shot that, and he was like doing his wife a favor, who was co-directing this indie movie that I got to work on, and like talking to him and just watching him work, I was like, wow, like this is, I'm getting an Ivy League course on cinematography right in front of me for free, and that was really something. So, are you looking to? Did you say you're saying you want to do more cinematography or more directorial stuff?
I did like a writer director film in college, and then I
Okay.
haven't really done anything since. I'm in the process of maybe working on a music video this summer.
Okay.
Probably directing, shooting, like that kind of thing. But it's just kind of hard because like where I'm at and the people I'm surrounded by, it's like I want to direct it, but I also want to be holding the camera, and it's just a matter of like not having enough people like around at the moment. So
Right.
um, I don't know. I think I have ideas for like feature films, but
Hmm.
on the shorter macro level, it's been hard to do. So,
Yeah.
uh, director of photography is something I've been working on for a lot. I did a lot of ACing in college,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
then now I kind of do a lot of that stuff,
Right.
both ACing and yeah,
Yep.
all of that.
Yeah. I think, like I said, I'm trying to. So when I got my Leica, I gave away all my other cameras, and now I don't have video access, which sucks. And I'm finding that I really miss doing a lot of video stuff. So I'm working on getting something I can shoot video on, because my girlfriend and I have an idea for a short film, and it's only going to be 15, 25 minutes, like an actual short film. Um, but we're really looking to do that. And I kind of was thinking the same thing. I was like, now, do I get someone to hold the camera? Are they going to be, so I think it's honestly going to be very, very indie, meaning just my girlfriend and me. And I think I might just even get something like a GoPro or something really, and kind of like rig out a GoPro, because the stuff I'm wanting to do is it's obviously going to, yeah. So here's the next conversation, right? Is I'm kind of already in the mode of emulating my heroes for film. Like in my brain, I'm like, okay, I really want to shoot this like a Malik movie or something like that. So, I'm now catching myself being aware of the influence and being aware of the copying of my heroes in this sense, for film. So, I'm trying to like shortcut that and get my vision down with a lot of things and kind of almost like figure out my process before I just like completely rip off somebody for
Yeah,
my first short film.
but I
So that's,
mean, I feel like in filmmaking, the intertextuality is a little bit more accepted. Like you don't want to
yeah,
like full on rip off, but so much of film is like in response to other things you've seen. So
yes,
it's a little bit more forgivable, I think, in that
right.
context.
And like, yeah, like you said, homage is very, that is prevalent in modern filmmaking. Like everything is kind of, meta in that sense, where it's like, oh, that was a scene from this movie, that was a scene from a Scorsese movie. You know what I mean? Like everything you can kind of
Yeah.
see the paper trail of influence within, like you said, the intertextuality. So, yes, that's acceptable, but it's still trying to shortcut that. But yeah, I'm really excited for that aspect, because like photography will always be a call and response by me and the world I'm living in. Whereas like I think film can be something that is even more intentional with what I'm trying to convey. I almost am afraid of having that much control, though. That'll be the weird thing, is like I
Yeah.
have the control over every shot, and there's really not that much that I get to respond to outside of like the panning off into some floating butterfly during the middle of a take. But, you know, other than that. But yeah.
Yeah, you can make the curtains blue if you want to.
Exactly. Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, yeah, I'm sure that if you were to make a short film or something right now, I'm sure there would be some Kubrick influence somewhere deep in your subconscious coming out.
I mean, the last film I did was like, it started off with the Kubrick shot. It was like a zooming out. It was about a children's television show, and the main character was a kangaroo, and he ends his take, and the camera like pans out, and all the cast and crew comes in.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
It was 100%
exactly.
like
right. There we go. That's exactly what I'm talking about, and that, like, my short film very much will be Terrence Malick.
Yeah. It's really hard, and I definitely think, like, when I think of like stories now, like, I'll sit there and I'll come up with this like great idea, and always, oh wait, that was a 1970s action movie I watched 5 years ago.
Yes.
And
yeah. There's so much of that within film and writing. You know what I mean? Like, there's so much of that within that. That's why, like, I do like separating the process, where it's like I have the stuff that I want to do with film, but then I have the stuff where with photography that, even fashion, where it is so much like finding something within it. And now you can do that within the context of film and whatnot, but it's obviously much harder because you have limited time. You have, whatever. You only have so many takes, so much light in the day. But with photography, I will always like just like the spontaneity of it. I will always like kind of finding those moments that maybe someone else wouldn't have seen. I'll always love that, just because it makes you more present. It makes you appreciate life a little bit more. At least, not you, I say. It makes me appreciate life a little bit more when I find these moments. And it certainly brings, there's this thing in New York where when you're walking around, you're so focused on what's in front of you that you forget to kind of look up and see all these huge buildings that are above you. You kind of forget that you're in this, this metropolis. And, even photography, I just, my eyes rise up just a little bit more than I'm used to, and I'm looking out for things even when I don't have a camera. And that's an aspect of photography that I'll always be like appreciative of. And I don't want, anything to kind of affect that part of it.
Especially like in my earlier days, I always said that, like, there's a photo here somewhere.
Yeah.
I just had to find it, like the right angle or the right position.
Yep.
And I think in a lot of my work, doing the more like quiet scenes, isolated scenes, like there definitely is that, but I've grown to learn more about the like responding to the moment and seeing things in real time.
Yep.
And
no, I think that part's well, and like you said, the process only becomes quicker. You know what I mean? Like with that, like
your eyes are just darting and you see
yes.
it. Oh, this lines up right here, and the building is the same as this person, and it's like it's all happens in a second.
Right. The filtration system, it happens a lot faster too, and the better you get at too, you can almost anticipate things, and that's the part that I'm liking now, where it's like, okay, all I need is someone to do this, and you're waiting for it, and then boom, it happens, and then you hold the shutter button, you take 3,000 photos, and you get, no, I'm just kidding. But no, it's cool being able to like anticipate a moment too. Like you can see the things lining up. It's like that, it's like a slow-mo, those Sherlock Holmes movies where like the thing is slowing down and he sees the punches. Yeah. It's like that. You see it slow down, it's about to happen, boom, you get it, and you're like, there's the fruits of your labor, putting in the hours, taking so many photos, studying so
Filming
much.
The fire this past week, I was having that. Yeah. Like, it was all happening and we were going, and I was like, oh, there's this girl in the window looking at the image, looking at it. And I didn't really get a good image of it, but it's like, I saw it, and in 2 seconds, I'm taking it, I'm walking, and I'm keeping on going.
Yep.
And one of my coworkers was like, yeah, I was just watching you. And it's like, the second I think that, hey, that could be a good photo, you're already there, like in position, taking it, and you're moved on to the other one.
Right. Because, you
don't even recognize those motions.
Right. And you learn over time, like, how fleeting those things are. You know what I mean? You've missed it enough times. You've missed the moment enough times that now you're so quick to respond to it, especially too, like, you get over the social anxiety of it. Like you get the
that definitely took a while.
Yeah, yeah, of course. And like, I will say that was one thing that maybe because I'm a large straight white man or whatever, but like I didn't have too much problem with right away. Like I just always took the photo. Now I'm not like Bruce Gilding it where I'm like, whoosh, I'm like sly about it. But like that was something I was luckily, I didn't have too much problems with now. But now it's like, okay, maybe I have to get a lot closer for an image because I'm anticipating it. You might have to get a little bit uncomfortably close, or get into a moment that maybe you would have stayed back from a few years ago. But it's worth it. Now it's worth it for the photo. Respectfully, I'm always erring on the side of empathy.
I've definitely like moving over to the X100 with that wider lens. It's like I'm so comfortable on a 70-300 that like I could stand all the way over here and get the image, but on a wide lens, I mean, you have to be like right up in there. Like there's no choice if you want like that intimacy.
Yes, and too like it's the life of it too. You know what I mean? Like when you're up in things, and it's funny I'm saying this now because I remember hearing, I'd watch videos of people saying like, no, you need a wide lens and you need to get up in things and whatnot. And I'd be like, yeah, right. I could do that with a 90, whatever. But now saying it like, in the experiencing, like those photos do have so much more life to them with a wide lens. When you're up in the mix, it adds so much more, I hate to use the word 17 times in a row, but life, you know what I mean? Like it looks lively, it looks like you're there rather than just like an observer, like from a distance. So I do enjoy
I definitely I still like the compression of a longer lens, but
yes.
I think I think you can probably, just living in New York and doing all this stuff, I think for me, like especially this time around last year, I was watching a lot of Paulie B.
Yeah.
Because there's just like all these photographers in New York. Because like if I can't be there, like I can at least learn from them, and just seeing like how they interact with the street. And it definitely took a lot into like my event photography work, where like I'm getting way more into people's faces, and like I'm supposed to be here. I'm the photographer of this event, and I'm gonna get what I need to get.
Right. Exactly. And that's exactly it too. Like, and the cool thing is about having the X100V. Or like these small compact cameras is people aren't as adverse to it. They're a lot more disarmed. When you pull up a big Sony with a big honking lens, they're going to be a little bit more shy. And I noticed that when I was using my Sony, but then when I
typically have on a monopod.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's a 70-300 with a monopod, and that scares everyone away.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
The noise of the shutter is just too much.
Right, terrified. Because it feels professional, whereas like, it's like the perfect combination of a camera, because now if you pull your phone out and take a picture of somebody, they're weirded out by it too. That's almost worse than a camera. So having something small and compact it allows you access to photos that maybe you wouldn't have gotten with a longer lens, maybe you wouldn't have gotten with a phone. So yeah, it's a different, like you said, having that in an event or whatnot, because do you use the X100V for events at all?
Recently I've been, so I'll carry the Sony, and then I have the X100V around my neck, and it's just ready to go if I need to take like a single image, and it's like I need to be quiet, because I was at an event where it was like a political dinner, and it was a very important event, and I'm like right up at the front with the people speaking, and I got I had a 24-70 on the Sony, and I'm right up in this guy's face to get like his face in like one of the thirds, and then you see the other people speaking.
Sure.
I took the image, and he immediately turns and looks at me.
Yep.
And it's just so loud. And then I took the same image on the X100, and no reaction. No one's looking at what I'm doing.
Right. Mm-hmm. No, and that's it too. Like, that's what the glory of those compact cameras is, the access that it gives you to, discretion. That camera flap. Even especially like the DSLR days where it would just be like whoosh, like with film, I get so many reactions of people like snapping and looking. Whereas now, even with my Q, it has like a little leaf shutter, and nobody ever sees it or hears it. And now I'm not using that for slimy purposes. But for the most part, like, you know, when it, like you said, whether it's quiet or maybe places that people are a little close quarters, it's ideal. I love those cameras for that.
Do you think that that's your end game, or are you still on the hunt for your next?
I want an M so bad. I almost like, I love the Q. I really do. I love everything about it. 28 is a really hard focal length for me. It's really, really wide. On set, I can get away with a 28 because everything's pretty close. And then if anything, that gives me some extra wiggle room for context. I can add a lot more elements. I can get some people that maybe I wouldn't get. So then it doesn't feel like I'm just taking a photo of the scene that would be seen by the camera anyways for like this, you know, the cinema camera. I get to add the people in with the 28, but like street stuff, again, like I said, I'm a big person. So, you know, if I have to get close, people know I'm there. So I've been having a hard time getting closer for photos because a 28 is so wide. You know, I worked my way down to a 35 and that seemed perfect. That's kind of where I want to end up. But 28 has been a challenge so far. I do like it. I think it's cool, but I end up cropping basically every photo I take to some extent, which is nice. It gives me some wiggle room, but also like it's not, I'll probably end up in the next 2 years getting like an M10 or something with a 35 on it. And just, that seems to be my end game. Will it be? Probably not. But that's where it seems like it's going. I do love the Q though. I think it's a great experience. The thing I like about the Q is the EVF. Like with the M, I don't know how hard it's going to be with like the optical viewfinder, like with the, you know, the rangefinder plates. That'll be interesting. That'll be interesting. But where, as far as like gear goes, are you enjoying your setup right now, or are you kind of having your eye on anything else?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm definitely, I think, investing more in that. Like, I want to like keep the gear for the long run, especially because like it's the going back, you know.
Yes.
I'm just always wanting to like continue to use my gear.
Right.
I don't know. I've been really enjoying the 100V.
Yeah. You gotta get
and
the
it's
new
my
one?
first time really. My dad actually got it for me, and
No
he
way.
didn't give it to me. Yeah, he ordered it like way long last year, and he gave it
No
to me for
way.
my birthday.
That's cool.
And fantastic gift.
Yeah,
and then sure
it is.
enough, a few weeks later, the 6
Right.
was
Yeah,
announced.
the new one comes out. Oh no. No, I'm sure.
But it's been so good.
Yeah.
I really don't know. Like, I would love to try like a real rangefinder experience because
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, if I just went out and got an M6, like, would I really like that? Because I'm so used to the SLR game.
Sure.
Overall, I like it. I think like maybe I'd go for a Mamiya 7 II one day, but like
the
I have the
Texas
RB.
Yeah.
There's no need for me to really like switch up because I have what I need for the time being. So
Right. I would say I had a really cheap Leica knockoff, the Canon 7. And I think it's only like, it only goes for like $150. So if you do want a rangefinder experience, it wouldn't be a bad idea looking into one of those, because the lenses, I think it was like the Japanese Leica, that's what they like branded it as, because it kind of looks like the old M3s. But it's a block, it's a brick, you know what I mean? It's a big rangefinder. But that at least gave me the experience of a rangefinder to see if I like it. I think now that you're shooting wider, I think rangefinders really work well at like 35. I think that's kind of the sweet spot. The sweet spot. I was shooting it at 50 and I was missing still a lot, let alone if I was shooting it at 90. But I think that would be a good way to kind of like see if you even like it before investing too much money in an M6 or something.
The big camera that's on my eyes right now is a new i2 Polaroid.
Oh yeah,
But I'm not wanting to drop a $600 on a camera when I have the SX70.
Yes,
but
exactly.
I know that I can take good photos on the SX70, but the i2 is better engineered, so I think I would have an easier time with it.
Sure.
So the SX70 is like, you fuck around and find out. Like I take one image and I see my exposure, I guessed correctly, and then I just keep like dialing it in as I keep taking photos.
Yeah. And that's, you know, it's almost like okay, do I spend that money on the i2 or do you spend it on like a bunch of expired like pack film? You know what I mean?
Dude, I shot a lot of pack film actually before it like went extinct.
Yeah.
And I missed that. I've wanted to drop $100 on some pack film, but
one roll or one pack of it. Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, I mean, I had the Andy Warhol like big one. Have you seen that camera?
Yeah. The long. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah,
there's a photo of me that my dad took at my senior prom on that camera.
Oh, really?
It's pretty
no
wild.
way. That's cool. That's cool. But yeah, like it's a hard. I'm always playing those games. It's like, you know, that was the reason I switched from film to digital. Is like I'm weighing the options of like cost. It was like, okay, I could spend a little extra money and get, you know, an X Pro 3, and then, you know, or I could spend that money on 40 rolls of Ektachrome or something. You know what I mean? It's a tough debate. And honestly, every single day I debate selling my Q and getting like an M6. Like I want every day I want to do it. But it would take a lot for me to get to that point. I want to almost get to
Do you prefer the 35 millimeter form factor over like 120? Did you ever shoot 120?
I've never shot 120. I love the look of it. I do. Now though, I almost would rather just get like a GFX. I know that's blasphemous. I really understand that.
That's really tempting.
Yeah.
And the X Pro 3, like now learning a little bit about Fuji color science and all that, like X Pro 3 and investing in the lens system is also pretty tempting.
Yeah. And I had the X Pro 3 is what I had before the Q. And I did like it, but I never bought any of the lenses because I didn't have the money. I'm poor. I don't make any money from photography. But I used like a $50 7 Artisans lens from like May to October. And that was like all my best photos were taken on an X Pro 3 with like a cheap little shitty, lens that was falling apart. And I got my best photos. And now I have like a Leica Q and I'm like not taking as good as photos as that. Granted, I've had it less time and whatnot. But yeah, I think I'm always going to play the gear game. I think I'm always going to play the digital versus film game.
It's a pretty dumb question of people saying that doesn't matter. Because, I mean, it 100% does to an extent.
Yes.
And at a certain point, it's like you can shoot on whatever. But, I mean, to start and to get attention, I mean, I really think you do need at least adequate gear, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, I definitely have gotten into the whole digicam trend, and I love that.
Yeah.
But it's like you have to know how to take a good photo first before you can even attempt to use one of those properly. So.
Yes, exactly. And I think, I just posted a video not too long ago. I think it was like last week where I like posted all the cameras that I was using and a couple photos from each camera. And most of them look the same. Regardless of what camera it is, most of my photos look the same. And I genuinely believe, and not in like some, inflated sense of self, but like I believe that if you hand me a camera, I'm going to be able to take a good photo with it. But now, had you handed me a camera when I first started, I would have taken a shitty photo. But I think that so many people worry also about the camera first. And I think that's also a mistake. You have to almost have a balance, like a good enough camera that you can experiment on and do things simply, but not so good of a camera that, you get your dream camera on the first shot and then you never have to develop like actually being good at photography if you want to be good at photography. I love people being passive about it. It's okay.
This may be a bit egregious too, but I shoot like autofocus only on my Sony.
Sure, yeah.
I don't know if you've were using that when you had yours, but the Sony autofocus is incredible.
Yes.
And it's like that is a part of the toolkit of using that particular camera versus using a manual focus only camera. So I definitely think gear matters to an extent because I learned like very quickly that the X100V does not have as good of an autofocus system as the Sony cameras do.
Yes.
And you have to adapt to that.
Right. And funny enough, the reason I switched from Sony, because I had an A7 III, back to an X Pro 3 with Fujifilm is because I felt guilty for using the autofocus so much. I always use the autofocus.
It's so good.
Yeah, I would just always use it. And two, I also think it's because manual focusing with those sucked. I always felt like I was missing with manual focusing. But now, like the Q has autofocus. I can autofocus with a Leica lens amazing. But I still don't use it because I almost don't trust it. Like I would,
Yeah.
it's the same thing we were talking about earlier about developing film. I hate that I'm pointing this pen at you the whole time. I hate, if I were to miss a photo because I missed on focus, I can accept that. But if I go to take a picture of something amazing and my autofocus focuses on something here instead of here and I miss the picture, I'm going to be pissed. So I almost just prefer going completely manual. And then two, I'm sure you've felt it when you switch from digital back to film for something, do you almost go, oh shoot, I've been using autofocus for the last 2 weeks. I got to kind of readjust to this. That's kind of why I shoot completely manual with digital, is because when I do pick up my film cameras, it's seamless. There's no change from one to the other.
I just get pretty paranoid when I'm using film.
Right.
I'm uber checking the focus and just making sure everything's right. But
absolutely.
Yeah, just different systems and gotta do what works best for each.
Yeah, exactly. No, and like you said, the gear question is important. I don't care what anybody says. They're going to care about what you're using. I care about what people are using. I love knowing what systems, people are making work with their photos. I will always be interested in it. I understand that that's not the end all be all for making good images. And I try to steer clear of talking about what I'm using that much. But yeah, it's always going to be a prevalent thing in a conversation.
I mean, I kind of like that, for the end of the day, a lot of my images, I'm on the Canon F1 now, which is a good camera for the history of film cameras, but no one's talking about the F1. The Mamiya 645 is a budget 645 camera, and the only one that's has a good name is the RB67, but even then you have the RZ. So exactly. I'm just making do with what I found to be good for me.
Right, exactly. And that's how I feel with the Olympus OM1. That's my film camera. And no one really uses that. That's not the sexy thing you use.
I got to pick one of those OM1s up in a camera shop, and it's crazy just how compact and
it's tiny,
economical the camera is.
Yes, it's tiny, completely manual, but it has this big, huge viewfinder, which was really cool when I first started using it, because Olympus is obviously known for microscopes and glass in general. So it had this huge viewfinder, and I loved that. But no one uses that for street photography or anything. I think Paulie B's friend Kazu. He was using that for a while. Now he's a Leica boy, but yeah,
they all end up at Leica.
I know. I ran into them.
I mean, I'll be there soon.
Yeah,
it'll be a few years.
Yeah, I ran into them. I ran into all those guys on last Saturday, and I finally had a Leica with all of theirs, but then they're giving me shit because mine was digital. They're like, oh, I was like, okay. I finally get to do the picture with you guys, but
I mean, I guess it is a bit of an elitist thing because they're already doing film photography, and then on that step up, you're in the Leica Club. I got to go to one of the Beers and Cameras events in California when I was there for a little bit, and I was rocking my Minolta X370 just because it was what had film in it, and it was definitely everyone's oh, you're holding a Minolta, it's a very interesting choice.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. That's how I felt with the OM1 and that kind of stuff. Or even when I had my Fuji digitals, they'd be nice, But now it's funny because you're seeing a lot of them now having the little Ricoh GR3s and those kind of things. You're seeing them switch to at least part-time digital and whatnot. So they're not as elitist, but or they'll have M10s or M11s. That's the other thing that you're seeing a lot now. But I still got, I'm still the odd man out with the Q, and but at least it's a Leica. At least it's a Leica. I can put my hand into the circle when they take the Leica pictures because I have the red dot at least. Yeah, right. But yeah.
Yeah. So you're saying that you're going to be in the city to shoot. So what is kind of your route, and what do you do on a traditional weekend of shooting?
So yeah, like I said earlier, I don't live in the city, so I have to commute into it. I live in New Haven, Connecticut, House of Yale, shut out, those elitist people. But so I take the Metro North 2 hours down into the city. So tomorrow, normally I would take the train and I would hop on the 4 a.m. train and get there as early as possible to get as much light as possible. But I don't want to wake up that early tomorrow. So I'm actually staying at a fellow photographer's place tonight. And so many people were talking about being out tomorrow. Like, it's kind of cool to see, the community of photographers in New York is really cool. I will say that it is unlike any other place with that, where you get to run into people, you get to see people online and see where they're going to be. So like when I get into the city, I tend to spend time in a lot of places that I don't see a lot of other photographers, because I do shoot a little differently. Whereas a lot of Paulie B's guys and whatnot, they're a lot of Midtown people because there's more people there.
Yeah. And they all talk about like they have a very specific route that they run, and it's about like the shadows on the buildings, right? Like it's all very specific.
Yeah. Well, that's the weird thing too, is they have like timing. They'll be like, okay, I know at this time the light will be coming down this street, and at this time, and I don't have that yet. I'm still learning all that. There's been plenty of times where it'll be like amazing light, and I'm on the exact wrong side of the city. It makes me so mad, but I'm slowly learning those things. So like me, I spend a lot of time in Soho and East and West Village because there's like older buildings, and for me that's kind of more of the stuff I'm kind of wanting to shoot, is like people, in windows, and not like their home windows, but like shop windows and those kind of things. But now because I've been hanging out with those guys a little bit more, I'm venturing up into Midtown sometimes. The only thing is I don't want to go there in the summer. Though there's so much glass that it's just reflecting off of all those, and you feel like you're underneath a magnifying glass. So that's something I'm to the point now where I'm almost not sick of New York. I don't want to say that. I'm not sick of it. But I've shot the same route so much that now I'm just kind of like picking random streets and walking as far as I can, just to find something else. And sometimes you find nothing, and sometimes you get a photo that you wouldn't have gotten had you not ventured out. So even on a microcosm of the conversation of getting out there with photography, even in New York, there's that, like just going to neighborhoods and places that you weren't at before. A lot of times I just try to go when there's good light. That's my timing wise. But yeah, so tomorrow I'll wake up early. There's supposed to be a nice sunrise. I'll go and get that, hopefully with some scenic stuff with it. And then I will probably end up walking 20 miles by the end of the day, getting about 50,000 steps in. And then I'll take my tired ass onto the Metro North and ride 2 hours home to New Haven and sleep as long as possible.
You talked about this a little bit. I know you have plans to start a YouTube.
Yeah.
Do you have any plans to do you ever want to document one of those trips, or have you thought about ways to document it?
Yeah, I think, funny enough, we were saying I was talking about maybe using a GoPro for my short film. I think the reason I want to get a GoPro too is so that I can do something like a POV throughout the day, like just where I'm walking. I think it would drive people insane though, because I'm just going, there is no rhyme or reason with what I'm doing. So I think people would go nuts, but I do want to do that. And I do want to do that more with YouTube and long form content, because, to kind of tie up the conversation, I'm really trying to stay away from just content for content's sake, and putting out just
what's up guys, this is the Leica Q and here's my review,
right? Or even going I went on a walk today, here's the photos I took. I don't even want to do that. I want to make something a little bit bigger than that, just because I not only want to make better content for people who are following me, but also for my own sake. I want higher value videos that bring more value in themselves, so they're not just content. And then I can kind of practice filmmaking and editing and those kind of stuff too. So kind of what you're doing. So I am planning on doing more YouTube. I just got to get the camera for that first. So if anybody wants to donate,
that's really exciting. Leave it down in the comments below, and
exactly.
We'll take a new camera.
Hit me up. Give me a GoPro Hero 11 or whatever the newest one is, and I will, shoot a video for you.
All right. I think that's about all we have time for today.
All right. Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I really genuinely look forward to, what you're doing with YouTube and whatnot. It's cool to see where we both were with the beginning of our content journey, and seeing where we're at now and seeing what you're doing. It's really exciting. So hopefully, we'll both have some short films coming out sometime soon, seeing the next evolution of what we're doing. So I appreciate you having me.
Maybe one day we'll have a legitimate collab.
There we go. Exactly. Yeah, there we go. You do a film, and then I'll shoot behind the scenes for it. There we go. There's the dream. Yeah, exactly. All right, man. Well, thank you very much. I look forward to talking to you soon, all right?
Definitely.
Because I live 2 hours away from the city.
Okay. What if we just talk about this to kind of end it out?
The pen?
No, like what you're...
Yeah. Okay,
so,
sure.